This last piece, and this is unfortunately for you, it's me speaking to you for a little while here. This is really about, okay, so you've heard how we got here. You've heard what we're thinking about. We've built out a framework of elements, and you saw that a little bit. And actually, I think we can flip to that next slide is fine. It is complex, and there's a couple things here that I really want to point out. One is that we've done this, but we've done it with hesitancy because we don't want to go too far down the road. So we've identified where the work needs to be done, but we're trying very hard not to do too much of the work before we can work together on it collectively. So again, the next session on January 31st will be very much a working session, an in-person working session at Shadbolt, where we will focus on each of the elements of this work. And I'm going to kind of walk you through what each of the pieces of that work are. As I do that, I'm hoping that you'll be looking at it and saying, this is work I'm interested in being involved with. Or maybe just as importantly, this is a work that I believe that someone in my organization would bring tremendous value to and would have a great interest in, who may not be on this call today. Because really what we're trying to do is we're trying to garner the resources of our community to be able to build this plan. And really the outcomes of our session on January 31st will be a clear work plan for each of these elements, one that identifies what the goals are, what needs to be done, and how we resource that. So it's really will be a working session. And in fact, between now and January 31st, we'll be pulling together micro groups of these working groups who will do the groundwork for each of these sessions. So when you come into the room, if you haven't been part of those, and I hope you will, when you come into the room, you'll have a well-planned day in front of you, and we will have direct outcomes. By the end of that day, we will have a path forward for each of these different areas. So I think it builds on, the nice thing about it is we will be learning from all these folks we've been speaking to today. We will be taking examples from other areas. We won't be starting from ground zero in any of these areas, but there is work to be done. So we need to understand each of the pieces in the model. We need to determine what we're trying to achieve and build a work plan to get there and find the required resources to get it done. As we go through the next slides, I want to reiterate again, we're going to define the work we're undertaking. If there's anyone in your group that can come and during and after and support the work before, during, and after the January 31st session, please make sure that you let them know. And also, I think the registration link will be up briefly. I think there it is. It's in the chat right now as we speak, magically as we speak. So one of the first pieces that we're looking at is I seem to have a different slide. I'm not sure why I have a different slide. That's the slide that I'm looking for. Thank you. I missed one there. Sorry. Asset mapping. I think that Kate spoke to this. I think that the folks from Froome spoke to this. I think that there's two different pieces. One is actually looking at data and looking at, and I want to speak a little bit more to that in a moment, but what the opportunity of working this way that we've already working together is to be able to actually share data that will build a big data picture for our community. And then the other is to be able to actually asset map across the work that we're already undertaking, all of the different pieces that are available, all of the different assets in the social agencies, all of the different assets within the city, all of the different assets, even in neighborhoods that may not be that formal, because we know there's a tremendous amount of assets, and we know where a lot of them are, but we need to build a much stronger map. But I do want to say, the data, when we talk about the data mapping, this is the one where people go, oh yeah, well, it's a good idea, but everybody thinks it's a good idea. You'll never get it done. I guess we don't know exactly when we'll get it done, but we really believe that there is an ability to actually take this. And frankly, we may not be able to backcast too far, but we may be able to to build a process that actually keeps our finger on data, that will drive our ability to continually improve our collective health and well-being with the right services delivered in the most accessible way. So again, on the work starts, and we're going next slide. As we go through the next slides, we're going to just talk about each of these different pieces. I'm going to flip quickly here. There we go. Now, I think this is it. Our current and ongoing integration work, we've been working in an integrated way for 4 years. We haven't done a great job of necessarily looking at how effective that is, and we haven't necessarily understood all of the different areas of integration, formal and informal integration. But more than that, the work that's happened beyond the PCN, both before the PCN existed and while it's existed, is integrative work across sectors that we need to understand and capitalize on. We need to be able to build on those pieces. So the great thing about it is, if we develop a strong process for understanding what has already happened, we can use the same process to understand the work that will be able to employ to evaluate the work going forward. And really, I didn't mention this before, or perhaps I did, but all of these pieces are interconnected. So one will feed the other. So culture, I think that this is one that's just so foundational. There's ways that we can support a common culture. We can embed common approaches around racism and stigma. We can seek opportunities to collaborate. We can create common language, which is really, I think that if anybody's lived in the health world for any period of time, we know that from one department to the next, from one organization to the next, we may talk about the same thing with a different acronym attached to it. I know when I went to start to work with Doctors of BC, they said, "Oh, there's a glossary on the front of the web page, which is all the acronyms." And I went, "Oh, that sounds kind of crazy." And then I read them, and it was a glossary that I think was about 100 pages long, and it made me understand that this may be a barrier to common culture. We need to create common ongoing opportunities for connection, but this is really at the core. And it may be the biggest change we're trying. We're trying to move to a community that self-determines its health and well-being needs and goals and takes collective responsibility for attaining them. And when we talk about sustainability, we know that culture can lead the way. If we have this culture in place, culture can lead the way. And part of that is around communication. So communication is, there are two different pieces of communication. One, we need to get our story down. And I know that Georgia, who's in the audience, is nodding her head vigorously here. We need to be able to tell. It's so complex, but we need to be able to tell this in a good way so that everybody in our community can understand it. We need to have a singular backbone where we can share information. And what that backbone looks like, where it lives, this is not, we don't know what that is, but we do know that we need to have a singular backbone. We need to have a means of ensuring that the information we share is both common, accurate, and timely. So we're telling the same story. It's really interesting. An example of this was around the emergency response work that was done over the last couple of years. And this was really a goal, was saying, how can we share emergency response, or we put out emergency response bulletins from a variety of different places at a variety of different times. It's confusing to the community. It's confusing to providers. It's not effective. How do we align that? How do we ensure that we have a single fount and that everybody uses that fount, however they may distribute it? Doesn't mean that people don't have their own passive distribution, but they're starting from a single place. And we're looking at that as a system-wide place. And then the other piece around this is being able to effectively communicate between providers, between service providers. And we talked about the relational piece, but really it's for the kind of pieces that we're talking about to reach their greatest efficacy. We need to be, those providers need to be able to talk to one another directly. They need to be able to share information in a very direct way. Our ability to continually and effectively communicate has already brought us a long way, but it's going to be even more important going forward. So these are this is the piece that that has excited people about Froome. The connectors, and particularly, I'll tell you, speak mostly about the connectors at this point, the community connectors. The opportunity to have people in the community, and it's interesting, Jenny and I were talking a little bit yesterday about this, and she mentioned it today. Their approach to connectors is to find the unlikely suspects, to not go to the people who are already the advocates in the community, the leaders of the neighborhoods, but to find the people who may not be doing that, but who'd be willing to take an hour or two's training and then simply be the and they found that that makes them more effective because they're reaching places that those advocates and leaders may not already reach. So I guess I would say we see that this is a really exciting possibility. There's already good work that's happened here. Burnaby Neighborhood House, through its senior ambassadors, is really building around around connectors. But again, this kind of goes back to, we believe the premise is that this will only be truly effective is if it's population based rather than sector based. That the efficacy of those people will be much greater if they sit down and talk to anybody and know how to point anybody in the place where they can get where they can move to that connection. And that and we have an understanding that people may fall into far more than one vulnerable sector. So it's really important. We've learned a lot from other jurisdictions. We'll be able to build on that work, the work that's already happening here. In terms of group education and support, we're already doing some of this work. This is and it's one of the reasons it becomes an element, because we've seen it as being extremely valuable. We did some under the auspices of the PCN. We did some mental health first aid training and we continue to do some. And what it does is it provides an opportunity to create sort of a common understanding, a common approach. I'm going to take racism as an example. There's been tremendous work in most organizations around addressing racism, and it's really valuable. But it would be made more valuable if we use the same curriculum and the same language. It really, some of the best work is done in bigger organizations, and some of the smaller organizations don't necessarily have access to some of those supports, and we need to make sure that it's more broadly supported. Really, we need to understand that this training needs to be the training and education needs to be available right across the scope of an organization and right across the scope of our community. And there's a real advantage to coming together in this way. Not only is it more efficient, likely more cost effective, it also ensures that we're taking a common approach across sectors. It brings us together to learn under a common roof. In other words, so now we're not working in our separate organizations, we're working together, we're taking a community approach. Highly valuable. You heard about social prescribing, and certainly social prescribing is a key component. And I do want to go back to, this is where we really drill down on the premise of this will work better if we're not simply focusing on a vulnerable population. Baldev spoke to it, and it's clearly true. If there are pieces that are or supports that are available to a specific population, and I'm a provider, whether I'm a physician or I'm a social worker or whoever that may be, it makes it harder for me to bring it into my regular work plan. And I feel as if I'm not able to serve my whole community, my whole panel, for instance, if I'm a doctor. So we really look at the opportunity in Burnaby to take social prescribing to the broad population. And also we have some technology that we can take into a place. We'll be able to, there's the Pathways technology, which is available for doctors, but there's also this emerging Burnaby VCN, which is really a network which has the potential to very easily create a connection that will support social prescribing. This is the one that we think will be immediately valuable beyond Burnaby. The processes and supports we put in place will be designed to make it easy for all providers, not only to understand and cross-reference services and supports, but to effectively communicate around specific cases and issues. Peers I guess I want to say that we've seen already the value of peers, and what we've also seen is that peer networks always tend to struggle. There's a strong need for peer networks. There's a strong desire for peer networks, but they take resources, not a huge amount of resources, but they do take resources in order to be able to survive and thrive. And they're such a critical part. They're an opportunity for us to identify the issues within peers and peer communities, and they provide us with a tremendous avenue. I think that in other communities we've seen that some communities actually actively support peers by giving them space. Some give them administrative support. They need those things, and they're incredibly valuable. This really points to the circularity within the system. Support for peers and networks brings direct value to them and strengthens the social ties within our community. At the same time, those peers provide valuable understanding of the issues we collectively face and access to knowledge and supports that we couldn't garner any other way. So in terms of individualized services, I think that this goes back to the doctor's office or the health authority services, or even some of the individualized services that are available from the social agencies. This system is there to support those folks, to be able to A, ensure that the right people are accessing their services, and B, ensure that they're able to get their clients and patients the services they need. In terms of even just simple things like booking appointments, meeting with navigators, community connectors, it's creating those pathways to individualized services, which will be really valuable. I think this is the health connector role is a key element of the Fromm model, and has been a key element of some of the models in Ontario as well. It's interesting because we know that this isn't the one that will necessarily look like it looks in other communities. But it doesn't mean we can't make it work here. We need to leverage some of we need to understand that, and I think that Kate mentioned it. Those health connectors, in Fromm, they live in the clinic. They're based out of the clinic, and certainly that's great if every primary care clinic could have a health connector that spent time there. That would be an ideal, a good situation. I'm not sure about ideal, but it may not be the way that we're able to do this. It may be that we need to build pieces with health connectors that live in some of the social agencies. And already we're seeing grants around that. We're seeing people take on that kind of work. We're seeing some of those folks, health connectors, show up in some of the community health centers in other communities. So we know that it's a critical piece, and it will be one that we need to do some work on. It would be great if there were direct funding to support this clearly needed role across our community-based clinics, and maybe one day there will be. But in the meantime, we really have the opportunity through innovation and collaboration to build this service in a really effective way. So these three pieces are all on one slide, and they're all big pieces of work. They're building an achievable plan. We need to be more purposeful. I mean, I think this is the thing about the model versus the initiative. We need to make this model. What does this model look like? What does this model look like in March? What are we launching in March? What does it look like in a year from there? What does it look like 5 years down the road? And how do we continue to plan in that way, in an effective way? How do we find support for this? How do we find sustainable support? I'm going to go back to that. We're taking this system-based approach, and yet most of the grant and project and program funding that is out there is actually geared towards specific populations, whether that be seniors or newcomers or a variety of others. And our premise is that if we deliver this on a population basis, we will serve those vulnerable populations better and more sustainably than if we do it on a sort of piece by piece basis. Excuse me, too much talking today. And it's an interesting case to make. I think that at the end of the it's one of those things where at the end of the day, people say, well, yes, of course that makes sense, but we don't know that we have the resources to do that. And really our case is, look, this is better use and more effective use of resources and is more sustainable. So this is one of the things that we work with, and we believe that we're on sort of at the innovative edge, and we're certainly hearing that there are folks who have a strong interest in it. And from within Burnaby, we're working on sort of, when we look to grants, we do it collectively and we take that stance. And we do believe that there will be supports, but we do need support going forward. And then this last bullet is a big bullet. You know, and the engagement that we do, the evaluation that we do, and the evolution that we do, these are ongoing. You know, one of the things is a longitudinal engagement strategy. We're not engaging around a project. We're not engaging around getting this model launched. We need to be engaged, period. We need to continually engage. You know, I think Kate spoke to, you know, the empowerment at the very ground level, and Johnny spoke to it, and others spoke to it, and it's critical. And we need to have clear processes and avenues of engagement at not just at the neighborhood level or the community level, but at the opportunity for the individual level. And we need to develop an evaluation framework that will support this in the short term and the long term. And unfortunately, I think we have some really interested partners who are saying, you know, we would be really interested in becoming part of this evaluation process. There's a huge gap. There's a huge gap in evaluating how systems evolve. There's a huge gap in evaluating connection in community. There's a huge gap in evaluating how we address social determinants and the value of social prescribing. And we have an opportunity to address that gap. So that's exciting. So it's all longitudinal work. For a successful system, there will need to be processes embedded around every one of these that will be ongoing processes. So I think we're one slide behind, maybe. Can we go to the next one, please? Thank you. That's great. So just briefly, I promise you, we're reaching the end. This event is coming up on January 31st. Registration is open. We hope you're registering right now. It will be a working session. It will be fast-paced. We will have food. We will have washrooms that you can easily access, and we will have fun. But it will be work. So I'm hoping that we'll see you there, and I'm hoping that you'll pass it on to your colleagues, both in your organization and beyond, who you think may have an interest. The more people we have doing this work, not only will the more quickly it get done. That's important, but the better it will get done. It's and I'd actually, just before I turn it over to Baljinder for final comments, or is Deborah still here, or did we lose Deborah? Well, Baljinder, why don't I turn it about Baljinder Narang is the chair of the Healthier Community Partnership Table in Burnaby. And I will say, I do want to say, just, you know, as we entered this work as a PCN, you know, the HCP, to use the acronym, was one of the first tables we came to, and it was one of the first supporters of, you know, this kind of partnership and this kind of moving forward in this way. And that ongoing conversation has been tremendously valuable and will be a cornerstone as we move forward. So I'd like to turn it over to Baljinder for some final remarks.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. This has been a very inspiring morning, and thank you to everyone who's took their time and attended this morning's session. And when I look at the list going down, we had more than 95 people. I could be wrong, but there were many people that I recognize from over the years who've kind of come to our table, or we have been engaged with them in one way or the other. And it's heartwarming to see so many people there. And I will say that my son also attended, which I was impressed with. That's Burnaby Narang, and we often get our mails exchanged because of our initials and name. But anyway, so it is my pleasure to be part of this conversation and to express enormous gratitude to our dedicated community partners for unveiling a model of health and well-being for community service for Burnaby communities. Just a bit on Burnaby Healthier Community Partnerships, or HCP, as you said, was established about 10 years ago and brought together a steering group with our community partners, including Fraser Health, City of Burnaby, Burnaby School District, Burnaby Division of Family Practice, Burnaby Interagency Council, and more recently, the Burnaby Board of Trade also joined the table. I'm optimistic about this proposed integrated model, Community Connections, because it aligns with the core values of HCP, including care, well-being, equity, collaboration, innovation, integrity, and trust. This model presents with an exciting opportunity to collectively build something that will be truly amazing. Our community's unique culture is the driving force that makes us endeavor this kind of endeavor possible and deeply impactful. It is this shared spirit that pushes us forward, fostering collaboration and innovation. And as we conclude today's symposium, I extend my sincere thanks to everyone who contributed so generously to this conversation. And for your passion and commitment to our shared vision, I encourage each one of you to join us for day two of the symposium on January 31st, where the real work will begin, as Jeff says. Together, let's turn these aspirations into a tangible action that will bring positive shape to the health and well-being of our community. Thank you again for dedicating your valuable time to continuing this journey of building a healthier and stronger community together.
Thank you, Baljinder. And we've been joined by Deborah, who I think will just to close us out. I think we have a song from Deborah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And wow, what an amazing webinar you hosted this morning, especially around healthcare. And you gave me a lot of food for thought, especially as I represent on the board for Vancouver Coastal Health Authority. And I really appreciate all the good work you're doing in Burnaby. And I like what some of the comments were made about, you know, having local and having information and adapt it and tweak it to your purpose and all that kind of stuff. So congratulations on a successful meeting, I hope, and I wish you all continued safety in your travels. And I'm going to share a song which is called Greeting of the Day. I'm going to have to unfortunately turn my camera off because my battery's starting to die, but I will Nation, Aunt Sally, and Sequoia song, and the prayer song. And so again, sending good vibes around the world. Thank you. Okay, I hope you can hear me okay.
We can.
Whoa, 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 yo, whoa, 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 holy, yo. Whoa, 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 holy, holy, hey, whoa, whoa. Thank you, everyone. Sending all of us to each and every one of you in your continued journey and the work that you do, especially in healthcare and in community care. OCM, Chen Fomento.
Thank you, Deborah. And thanks to everyone. Thanks again, Baljinder. And so I'm going to give you 10 minutes of your life back, which I'm sure you all appreciate. Really appreciate your time. Really hope that if you have questions or thoughts and would like to bring them forward, please let us know. And we'll look forward to seeing you all on January the 31st. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.